Max Wardell, overheadathletics.com. We're going to do a book review today on the art and science of baseball pitching. Oh, don't knock them all over here. So we're going to do a book review on the art and science of baseball pitching. Dick Mills and Brent Rushall. Good book, really good book. You want to stay tuned through this whole video, find out what we thought was best, and what you may be able to take away from something like this. All right, guys, so The Art and Science of Baseball Pitching, the Coach's Complete Handbook of Scientific Pitching by Dick Mills and Brent Rushall. This is an interesting book. It's actually a very long read. It's fairly expensive, but I think there's some great stuff that's outlined in the book, especially in the beginning. It kind of goes through how to do a critical appraisal of research, and I think that's really important in, especially in the strength and conditioning and the coaching sectors, because a lot of times we see, study says this, and we automatically go with whatever the results are without ever looking at how valid is this study. And that's something that is talked about here in the beginning, and they talk about all different studies and errors in actually analyzing studies, and how that's applied with weighted ball research and different things, and how certain studies don't have a control group, and then some studies, the actual intervention group, they had multiple interventions, so we can't narrow it down to what was actually causing the effect that we saw. So there's some good stuff in there. The same thing that goes through long toss. The stuff on elastic energy is a little bit antiquated now, with what we're finding out more, especially in regards to muscle fiber types and elastic recoil with regards to the serial elastic components and things like that. It goes through stretch shortening cycle. It goes through some of the principles that we've known for a long period of time in terms of the size principle and the all or none principle, which is very, very useful for coaches, for trainers, for everybody. The pitching mechanics stuff, it's got some interesting conceptual stuff. I don't personally agree with all the pitching mechanics, info here. I don't think it was looked at, completely through, the lens of anatomy and biomechanics so much as, from a coach's perspective. Stuff in here is good when you look at the science, and that's what I think you can get a lot from, because it pulls together a lot of relevant science stuff in terms of, the Magnus effect or things like that, which are very useful to understand if you work with throwing athletes. I'm more advocate of what this book puts together in terms of that stuff, in terms of the different types of, pitches are very good and things like that. I'm not, a huge fan of maybe some of the stuff that they actually prescribe in terms of exercise, but their depiction of different, phenomenons and needs for different types of energy sources and stuff. There's a ton of information in this book, and it's hard to even do a book review on something this long because it encompasses so much stuff. There's, some good psychology stuff in here. I just think this is an overall good resource to have. Well, not everything in here is, I guess, objective. Some of the stuff is a little bit biased, and you'll be able to kind of decipher between what is biased and what is just, an objective look at the science, because a lot of what you'll hear online is not really an objective, view of the science, or a lot of what you hear on TV channels or whatever. I don't look at the science very objectively, and what ends up happening is you come to conclusions that aren't necessarily accurate. So this book does a great job of actually going through the science, and then after going through some of the science, kind of giving their rendition or their practical approach based on that, which is understandable, but I think that sometimes some of the things are overlooked or miscalculated in that portion. But overall, the book is an awesome book. If you want to learn about the science and learn about critical appraisal of research as it relates to the throwing related research and things like that, this is an awesome book, especially if you're a coach or if you're a strength and conditioning professional. But like I said, as you go through this book, just kind of, pay attention for when things are more of a biased perspective and when things are more of an objective perspective. And and kind of make up your own decision. As it says on here, the science and art of baseball pitching, there's an art component, and everyone's going to have a little bit different belief on that. The conclusions they draw from many of the studies are really accurate, but just understand that this is, not the Bible as it comes to pitching training, but it's another great resource in the toolbox. And if you haven't accessed this text, it's useful to look. Even if you don't agree with a lot of the things that are, purported or put forth in this book, it'll give you some perspective on why they may have come to those conclusions, and that will better help you to kind of shape how you think about things, because if you understand where that perspective comes from, you can understand why it's correct or not correct. So great book, great resource. It'll definitely challenge you to think, and it'll definitely provide you with some great scientific basis for interventions that you do and for various pitching applications that you might prescribe with your athletes.